Hi, this is Jenn Clamen from the Coalition for the Rights of Sex Workers, and you're listening to Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyle.
You're listening to Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles, and I'm Frank because I have to be. In studio today we have Jenn Clamen, who is a representative of the Coalition of Sex Worker Rights. Welcome to studio, Jenn.
Thank you, hi.
Let's get right into the interview. What is the mission statement of the Coalition? What is the Coalition?
The Coalition for the Rights of Sex Workers is a group of male, female, transsexual, and transvestite sex workers who work towards recognizing sex work as work and fighting for sex workers' rights in general.
Can you tell me a little bit about the history of the Coalition, how and why it came to be?
Yeah, the Coalition was formed in 1996. There was a conference on sex work led by a bunch of academics at UQAM, and a bunch of sex workers decided at that time to start a group in defense of their own rights, to adjust certain rights because they were sort of tired of hearing people talk about sex work at the time. I wasn't there at the time, that's what I'm saying today. But they came together and they did, at that time, a bunch of very colorful actions, like go to the mayor's office and serve a spaghetti puttanesca and jumping out of a cake, and all these very visible actions to sort of let people know who sex workers were and why we deserve rights.
And prior to this particular conference, was it?
Yep.
Were the conferences a regular thing happening?
No, it was just a one-off, really.
So then that's just
how the what you'll find a lot of times is when there's conferences around sex work, a lot of sex workers will organize actions from the issues that came up, and one of the things that came up was we need a rights group for sex workers. At the time, there was already Stella, the organization for sex workers that existed, but I think the sex workers in Montreal realized that they needed more of a rights group that could be visible without risking any funding or anything like that.
I guess that brings me to my next question. Can you go into why it's necessary and or important to have this type of coalition in existence?
Yeah, it's a good cause. It's really important to recognize sex workers' rights as human rights, and that sex workers be recognized as citoyens, as citizens of our society. And a lot of the times, because of the stigma and discrimination associated around sex work, people forget that sex workers do have rights and that this is a job, and we need workers' rights in addition to that. So,
you had mentioned a little bit earlier about the organization called Stella.
Yes.
Can you give me just very briefly, for the benefit of our listeners, what is Stella and what relationship it has with the Coalition, if any? Okay,
Stella is a member of the Coalition. The Coalition was actually born out of Stella at the beginning because it's a funded organization that provides services and defense work to enforce sex workers. It's run by sex workers, for sex workers. So it's basically, if there's a drop-in and there's lots of services and lots of pamphlets and stuff and tools that come out of Stella to inform sex workers about what their rights are and how to work safely and with dignity. So it's not actually for male sex workers, so that's how the Coalition differs. But Stella's a member, and they're always there to sort of support our actions and take part in it.
Now, you're an activist.
Yes.
What can you tell me about why you became an activist?
I hold these issues very dear to my heart, and for me, it's a lot of different reasons. I mean, mainly because it is a good cause, because it's important to recognize the marginalized groups in our society and what kind of rights certain people are denied. And I think that sex workers are denied, one of the most marginalized groups in society, especially on the street. And it's just really important to recognize those rights and fight for people to be a part of our actions, etc., or else we're not really being fair or just in any of our actions in the world if we're not recognizing that everybody deserves those. So that was my main motivation.